I hope you're all doing okay today. My name is Dr. Kristine and I'm here today just to have a bit of a chat with you all about how we can make the best of the holiday period, regardless of our circumstances, really. So the topic today that we will be covering is mindfulness, living in the moment over the holidays. The idea of mindfulness might be very new to a lot of you. It might be something that you've heard in passing but aren't quite sure what it is, or it might be something that you've never heard of before. Either way, that's okay. This is really just an introduction to mindfulness whilst placing it in the context of living in the moment over the holidays. And living in the moment is part of really a main premise of mindfulness, the idea of kind of living in each and every moment we have it. So I suppose just to kind of start, I suppose I was just thinking about what everybody's situation might be over the holidays. Of course, we are all so different. Our families are also different. Our experiences at any one point in time are so different due to the changeable nature of life. So it may be that this year you are looking forward to Christmas, you're catching up with family and, have a lot to be thankful for, but also, as Christmas can be, maybe very stressful and busy and frantic and very little time sometimes to actually take a little bit of a step back and think, well, what do I need over these holidays to help me not only cope with the holidays and the stress that might come with it, but also make the most of the good times as well. And of course, there's other situations where we might be spending time with family, but there may be a lot of difficulties going on, maybe, interpersonal difficulties. We all, as families, can tend to grate on each other more so than, I suppose, anybody in life. So there's always those kind of situations going on over the holiday period as well. And of course, there are a lot of people who may be going through a lot of pain and suffering this year. Maybe they're suffering from some mental health difficulties themselves, might have lost a loved one or had some really difficult changes in their lives or experiencing an illness. Or something's happened within their family to make this year particularly difficult. Sometimes it's that we've lost people in the past and Christmas can bring up a lot of that again, or we've lost people around Christmas time, which can also make it difficult. And of course, it's also important to realize that not everybody does have someone to spend time with on Christmas Day and over the New Year. And again, that can be a variety of reasons, and some people might actually even choose to be on their own. So everyone is really experiencing a whole host of different things in life in general, and therefore, of course, will be experiencing a whole host of things in terms of the holiday season. So just to kind of get us started, a little bit about me and my business. My business is called Let's Talk NI Psychology Service. Basically, I returned back home to Northern Ireland a few years ago and set up a private practice working from home. There's a few different services that we provide, face-to-face, online and telephone psychological therapy. The online thing is relatively new, so now I'm also providing therapy for people who may not be able to come into the clinic or for a variety of reasons would prefer to do it online. Also people who may not live in Ireland at all, who want to access the services. I also am starting to provide online seminars such as this one covering a range of mental health and self-care topics. So I'd be really interested to actually get feedback as to what kind of topics people might be interested in, so I can really tailor it to think about what people really want to hear and to learn. Because of course I'll have ideas in my head, but that might be quite different than what people are actually thinking themselves. I also provide clinical supervision to support other counselors and therapists. As therapists ourselves, it's very important and part of our job and something we have to do from an ethical standpoint that we get supervision regularly. It gives us an opportunity to go to other people for a sounding board and to reflect upon the services we are providing and the therapies we are providing to ensure that we do help our clients in the best way possible. So that's another part of a big part of my job. And I also provide consultations providing mental health related services. So that's a little bit about my practice and what I do. And then there's a little picture of me so you all know what I look like. My name, as I said before, is Dr. Kristine Abercrombie. I am a chartered clinical psychologist. I've been working and studying in the field of psychology for around 17 years now, so I've experienced a lot of different things in a lot of different fields, which has been very exciting and challenging at times as well, but I've definitely enjoyed it and continue to do so. And my main ethos within my service is to provide clients with a service tailored to meet their individual needs. And so it really is about thinking about what any particular client or clients are really needing and how I can help them in the best way possible. And one thing, I started integrating mindfulness into my professional world probably around 12 years ago, I think. And I've been providing mindfulness to people on a one-to-one and group basis throughout that period. And over the past 3 years in particular, it's something I have become increasingly passionate about, partially due to a personal experience myself whereby I've started suffering from chronic back pain quite a wee while ago, and I started using mindfulness to help me with that, and I've really embraced it and have kind of really experienced how beneficial it can be as a way of life, really. So just a little bit about my experiences with mindfulness, which I'll probably reflect a little bit more about later if I think it's important just to put a little bit of context to the whole thing. So to start off, this will last probably an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how sidetracked I get. I'll try and keep focused. I just wanted to start off by kind of making sure you're comfortable. It's important that you kind of do what you can. I know this is a busy period and there might be a lot of people around or quiet, and it's about just taking that time for yourself, but to find a quiet part of your house where you're unlikely to be disturbed. And also turn off your mobile phone if it's on, or even put it on silent if you're expecting maybe some phone calls or whatever, just to kind of help you focus, because we are going to be going through some meditations and everything during this practice today. So it is important to have that space for yourself right now if you can. Of course, obviously life does happen, so just do whatever you can. Again, we tend to be very much locked to our technology these days, which I know is ironic because we're doing this through technology. But if you could close down any other programs open on your computer, particularly any social media where you might be getting notifications and things, that would be great as well. And then last but not least, do what you can to get yourself in a comfortable position. Perhaps that's sitting or lying down. So somewhere where you're comfortable yet supported and feel like you'll be able to relax a little bit through the presentation. Okay, so just a little bit of kind of setting the scene stuff there just to make sure you are all okay. We're going to start it off, I thought, by actually doing some mindfulness to begin, so we can kind of directly experience it and then maybe go on to kind of discuss it in more detail and reflect upon how we can use it over the holidays. So one of the main premises in mindfulness practice is called a 3-minute breathing space. The breath is hugely important within mindfulness. So if you could just do what I said before, and if you could get yourself a little bit comfortable, close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do that. And I'm just going to talk you through a little 3 or 4 minute breathing space exercise. Again, I realize this is probably very new to everyone. So if you need to kind of open your eyes or come time, just do what's best for yourself. So if you could just close your eyes, and I just want you to start focusing on your breath. Unlike maybe some relaxation you might have tried in the past, it's not that I want you to change your breath or do anything any different with it. I just want you to notice it. Notice your breath breathing in and breathing out. And just observe what it feels like. Not trying to change it or make it any different, but just letting it be how it is at this time. Notice whether your breaths are shallow or if they're deep. Whether you're breathing through your nose or your mouth. And just notice what it feels like. And as you're doing this, I imagine your mind is probably wandering off to different places, maybe thinking about what you have to do or what you haven't done, or worrying about something, or thinking about a whole range of different things. And that's okay. But what I would like you to do is just notice that when it happens. Notice when your mind wanders to a thought. Just note and observe that thought. And then when you're ready, just let it go and bring your attention back to your breath. Breathing in and out. And again, when your mind wanders again, just observe it. Notice what's happening. And again, bring yourself back to your breath. It's important to really note that there's no right or wrong way to do this. It really is just about living in each and every moment as it arises. Notice how your body feels when you're breathing. And again, just observe any thoughts that you might have and bring your attention back to your breath again. Just in this moment. There's nothing else you have to do or go to do. Just lie here and focus on your breath. Noticing any thoughts that come and go. Kind of like they are just clouds passing in front of you. Notice any emotions or feelings. And again, that's okay. Just bring your attention back to your breath and focus on your breath, breathing in and breathing out. Remember, there is no right or wrong way. And then just when you're ready, just take your time to connect yourself back with your surroundings, whatever noises you might hear, whatever's going on around you, and just open your eyes when you're ready. And just slowly take your time to re-engage yourself back into the world around you. Noticing how you're feeling right now in this moment. The one thing that is really great about kind of idea of breathing within mindfulness or any kind of meditation is it is the one thing that is constant. As long as we are alive, we will breathe every time. Yes, it might be levered if you have lung problems or whatever, but it is something that will happen moment by moment. So it's a really good thing to use as an anchor to bring you back into the present. So that's just a little introduction, kind of a practical one rather than going straight away into some of the more theoretical stuff. So next, what exactly is mindfulness? Pretty good place to start, really, isn't it? Mindfulness is defined as the intentional, accepting, and non-judgmental focus of one's attention on the emotions, thoughts, and sensations occurring in the present moment. So there's a lot of words really to take in there, a lot of different concepts and ideas. So if we just kind of break it down, so it's the intentional. So the idea is that mindfulness is conscious, that we're making a conscious, intentional decision to engage in what is called mindfulness. Accepting, so it's about learning to be in the moment and accepting things just as they are. Non-judgmental, and that's a really important part of all of this because it's about realizing that when you're practicing mindfulness or trying to live in a mindful way at some point in your day, that it isn't about getting it right or wrong or judging what you're thinking or feeling during that time. It's about really kind of coming at it from a viewpoint of being non-judgmental. And then focusing one's attention on the emotions, thoughts, and sensations occurring in the present moment. So it really is about living in the present moment. If we think about all of our senses, so our smell, our sight, our taste, our touch, our hearing, as well as all the internal processes that go on within our mind, the emotions and thoughts that we feel and the sensations in our body, there's just so much change in all of that throughout the day. So it's about really trying to, when we can, bring ourselves back to the moment so that we can truly experience life as it is at that time. This is a really important point that I think kind of makes a lot of sense for me. Mindfulness meditation doesn't change life. It's not going to get rid of the difficulties that are perhaps in your life at the moment in terms of any losses or grief or changes that you might be experiencing. The life that we live remains as fragile and unpredictable as ever because that is the nature of life. It is unpredictable. In good and bad ways, change can occur at any time. Meditation changes the heart's capacity to accept life as it is. So it's really about teaching us how to accept life as it is, which is a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge, and it's not an easy one to achieve. And it does take some practice and kind of engaging in that. The one thing about mindfulness is even if you don't, really engage in it from a full perspective, you can still use it to help yourself to, become more resilient at different points in your day and your life. So a little bit more about kind of what is mindfulness. So mindfulness combines meditation, so just, for example, what we just done, breathing techniques, again, like what we just done, and paying attention to the present moment. So those are the kind of key elements to it. Um, and just, I suppose, slightly repeating what was said before, it involves acceptance, meaning that we pay attention to our thoughts and feelings without judging them. I think as human beings, we are naturally judgmental towards our thoughts and feelings, being hard on ourselves for them, becoming very attached to them, without believing, for instance, that there's a right or wrong way to think or feel in a given moment. So it's really about releasing that idea that in that moment we should be feeling or behaving or thinking a certain way. So it's quite different to a lot of other therapeutic approaches where the focus is about changing things, where with mindfulness it's more about acceptance, and being with what we're experiencing in that moment, which does sound a little bit scary and a little bit maybe counterintuitive. But as we talk about it a little bit more, I think it will become a bit clearer as to what it means. The thing about mindfulness, though, is that a lot of these ideas can really feel very abstract, and hard to get your head around until you start to, maybe read a bit more and practice it in your daily life. So I suppose don't expect yourselves by the end of this seminar to kind of feel like you know exactly what mindfulness is and how to integrate it into your life. It's more about taking what you can from it, over your holiday period. And then if you are interested and feel like it's something you want to look into more, um, really looking into some of the references at the end, or contacting myself to discuss it in more detail either. So just got a few wee diagrams now to make it a little bit more interactive and interesting. So just breaking it down again, mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. I like this little picture. It's funny because as human beings, being able to think a lot and contemplate and cognitively process things in the degree of intellect that we can has been a huge part of our evolutionary process, and enabled us to achieve so many different things. But the thing is that in the process along the way, sometimes we've lost some of the instinctive nature of actually being in the moment and living in the moment, and enjoying the things that we can enjoy when things are good, and staying with the feelings that we have when perhaps we are feeling more, having more suffering or struggling somewhat. And then of course, so you've got this is obviously the person, then you've got this little dog just walking around, and all he's thinking about is the trees. So if there's any animal lovers there, I'm sure you know this yourself. They just focus on what's in front of them at any one given time. And because of our evolved intellectual capacity, sometimes we do lose the ability to find that simplicity in our lives again. That's so very important. So yeah, the idea is, are we mindful? So was our mindful, or are we mindful? So I do really like that one. And then the other idea really inherent, not only in mindfulness, but in a lot of the therapeutic approaches, if not all, that we use in life, and in clinical psychology, is the idea that thoughts are not facts, even though they tell you they are. When we have a thought, it's like it takes us over. And in that moment, we are convinced that that thought is the reality, that that's exactly the truth of the world and our situation and us or the people around us. But actually, all it is a thought, So the most of the time, we don't know if they're actually facts, yet we hold on to them with such intensity that, yeah, we just believe that they are, particularly when they're encapsulated in fear or sadness or worry or insecurities. So in this little picture, you see somebody sitting there in a slight meditative pose, and the little cloud thought thing says, you sit there with your eyes closed and sighs. And then she says, your point. And then the cloud, is that any way to treat your mother? So that's the kind of internal voice. And then she says, you're not my mother, you're a thought, a memory. And then again the thought, this is what I get after all I've done for you. So when this lady was meditating, she had an internal process of an old pattern in her mind where perhaps she's been told you're sitting there not doing anything, and thinking, oh, maybe I should do something or I shouldn't be doing this. But then she was able to take a step back from that thought rather than get caught up in it and let it spiral into wherever else it might go, maybe make her get up and stop meditating and think that she should go and wash the dishes or get something ready or do something from someone. And she's able to stop and go, you're not my mother, you're just a thought, a memory, and separate herself from the thought that she was having. So it's a really nice little diagram. Another little analogy, quicksand analogy. Pain demands to be felt. I was actually watching that movie, I don't know if anyone has seen it, called The Fault in Our Stars, the other night again. And I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's about two kids with kind of teenagers with cancer. And a really, really beautiful, beautiful movie. And in the midst of it, there was a quote that one of the teenagers said. I can't remember which one. But it says, pain demands to be felt. When we suffer, whether it's emotionally or physically, that pain does demand to be felt. And a lot of the time, what we have learned to try and do is to distract ourselves from that pain, which is also a coping mechanism in itself, and comes in very, very handy a lot of the time. But from the idea of mindfulness, the idea is that if we struggle and struggle and resist those kind of difficulties, that actually we get caught in like a quicksand idea where we're struggling and struggling and we're just kind of getting caught in it rather than allowing ourselves to stay and sit and be with whatever it is and gain some clarity over it by actually not resisting. So you can see in this little diagram, it's not the clearest, but I just wanted to put it in anyway, that this little boy says, oh no, this sand must still be wet from the rain. It's like quicksand. It's pulling me in. So that's kind of his thought. I must struggle, but it's futile. The more I move, the deeper I go. It's hopeless. So the more he struggles and struggles and struggles, the deeper he's kind of getting lost in the quicksand. And then this little girl says, quit floundering, will ya? You're ruining my sandcastle. So actually the little boy was only playing and pretending. And then he says, some people just lack an imagination. So in the end, actually, he was just pretending. And the wee girl thought, that he was just floundering around. But the idea I suppose to go back to is this idea of struggling. It's futile sometimes. Sometimes it works. Sometimes we can resist and go off and do something else. But generally, at some point, it will come back again, as much as we wish that it won't. Sometimes it doesn't, and distraction can be a really good tool. But from a mindfulness perspective, to sit with a thought or a feeling or emotion and just let it be, can really help you to gain some clarity and understanding of what it is that you're experiencing in that moment. So I just wanted to go through a few tips, or a few, not tips, myths about mindfulness. Um, I suppose because mindfulness comes from a Buddhist philosophy, a lot of people might still feel like it's quite hippie-ish, although I have to say it is becoming more and more widespread and prolific within society, which is incredibly exciting. It's being used in schools and businesses. You can see on the internet how, chief executives from Google are incorporating it into their business. And it's really an exciting time for mindfulness, but of course it still comes with a lot of preconceived ideas of what it actually consists of, given its more meditative and Buddhist background. So just to go through some of the top myths, mindfulness is for taking a time out from life, quieting the mind and reducing stress. So that's definitely a huge myth about mindfulness, that it actually is about taking time out. And sometimes, it is. It's about kind of giving yourself that break from life. But I suppose from what you were doing, or it could give you some time to relax. But it's really about being with life more rather than taking time out. And rather than being about quieting the mind, it's more about being with the mind and observing it in a way that allows you to really experience what it is you're experiencing at any one time. So mindfulness isn't something that you have to go and lie down in your room for an hour every day and practice, and that's the only way that you do it. It's actually incorporated in everything we do in our life if we want it to be, which is quite exciting. So again, the idea that you need to carve out plenty of time in a serene, mindful space. There are times when you're doing your mindful practice that it is important to have some quiet time. But again, you don't need to carve out much at all. It takes very little time every day to do a few meditations, and actually a lot of them you can even do when you're out and about, or if you have 5 minutes in your car, if you're socializing with friends, standing in a queue, and we'll go through some of those later. There's just so many ways that you can integrate it into your life. Again, there's a myth that it's about focusing or concentration. Mindfulness isn't about focusing in on any one particular thing. It's about observing exactly what's going on. Sometimes the different meditations will take you in different directions, or the different practices even will take you in different directions. But it really is about observing what is happening in that moment. Mindfulness is for people who are relaxed. It is for anyone. I think none of us are relaxed all of the time. You don't have to wait until you're relaxed to try and integrate mindfulness in your life. It's actually usually when you're not relaxed that you need it most, and then continue, practicing it generally as a way of life, even when you are perhaps feeling more relaxed. And last but not least, and I can definitely vouch for this one, mindfulness teachers are always mindful. Well, that is definitely not the case. I can tell you myself that as much as I practice mindfulness, I am most definitely not always mindful. That you try and integrate into your life, and there's always a lot more to learn, and it's I suppose kind of impossible in some ways to do it all of the time, and we still all get lost in our emotions and caught up in everything that we are experiencing, as you would obviously expect. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of interference at the moment with my mobile, so I apologize for that. So go on to the next slide. Yeah, I just thought now would be a little bit nice time just to take a few minutes to reflect upon, some of what we've just kind of went through. I think I'm just gonna, be quiet for a few minutes and stop talking and give yourself a little bit of time just to think about the meditation that we did at the beginning, what that felt like, what some of the stuff that we've talked about so far kind of makes you think about, and if it's different than what you might have expected. So kind of any questions that you might have at this moment in time. Okay, well, I hope everyone's doing all right and is enjoying it so far. I want to apologize again for my phone going off. I advise you guys to put it on silent and didn't myself. But in the idea of being mindful, I will not judge what has just happened and just realize that you know we all make mistakes and that it's actually okay um, that that happened as well. So next bit. So what is cluttering your mind this holiday? I've got a little picture of a very kind of messy house as we will all have, I imagine. And yeah, even whenever I look at that slide, it really does, make you feel cluttered. And that is what our brains are like all of the time. We have thoughts per millisecond. They're just constant and changing and feelings. What are we going to have to do? What have we not done? What's somebody going to think of me? Am I going to be able to do this? How is this person feeling? Um, just a huge amount of stuff generally. Um, you know, reflecting about the past, feeling connected with difficult emotions that you might have had, missing people, so many different things that constantly go through our mind in any moment, um, thinking about the future and thinking about the past mostly, really, what we have to do and what has happened. Um, worrying about lots of different things as well as being excited about a lot of different things. But again, a lot of the time we are lost um, thinking about what it is that we have to do, and especially around this time of year, and it can be very difficult to bring ourselves kind of back into the moment. So if we just go through the idea of the mindfulness bell, which is a really nice idea, because we can't all of a sudden, or even if you're practicing mindfulness for a long time, you can't be mindful. It's very difficult to be mindful all the time. So one way to think about it is to actually kind of like give yourself a mindfulness bell. So maybe just a few times a day, just think about the mindfulness bell and think, okay, what is it that I could be doing? How can I be more mindful about what I am doing right now? And it doesn't matter what you're doing, how you're feeling, none of those things. It's about how can you live in the moment in that time. So here's a few examples. Perhaps you decided to brave the weather and go out for a nice walk, either on your own or with a family member. So sometimes you can use the mindfulness bell to just ask yourself, how can I be more mindful in this moment? It might be about noticing the beauty around you, noticing what your body feels like, if you're cold, whether when you breathe you get that cold fog through the cold outside. Um, Notice any thoughts that you're going through your mind, any emotions. So again, it's not about anything being right or wrong in any way, just about living in the moment in that second and noticing what is going on around you. And we're actually going to go into this in a little bit more detail in a little while. Um, of course, around this time of year, between Christmas and New Year, spend a lot of time sometimes in queues, waiting and picking things up and doing things and doing errands, or maybe another, quite mundane activity. So again, it's about, well, using your mindfulness bell during any of those activities to just think, how can I be more mindful right this second? So maybe it is just about focusing on your breath or just tuning in to how you're feeling in that moment and just noting it and letting it go. Not that you have to change anything of what you're doing or feeling, but just recognizing it for what it is at that moment in time. And of course, it's a great time for eating. I know I love eating. I love my food. But a lot of the time, we really don't take the time to enjoy what we're eating. Um, I know I tend to scoff my food too quickly a lot of the time. And again, we're going to do a wee meditation in a moment for this. And it is just really about focusing and really enjoying or tasting what it is that you're eating, even if it's a Brussels sprout and you don't really want to eat it. Really just kind of coming to life with that kind of level of curiosity. And again, a different activity like washing dishes. There'll be chores to do over the holiday period. And, you might think, well, how can I get anything from that? But it is just about really noting what the water feels like, what the soap feels like, how you're feeling at the time, what any thoughts are going through your mind. It just really sounds really weird being with the dishes or whatever chore you were doing at that time. So it's become something that you can engage in more than you actually ever thought you could. So, and there's like 100, like there's just so many examples of how you can use a mindfulness spell, and it's very unique, obviously, to yourself. So just play around with it, come at it with a little bit of curiosity, see what it's like. A really important thing to share is the benefits of mindfulness meditation, just to really show, what research has found in terms of how it has helped people. So it has been found to improve mood and quality of life, to improve your memory, creativity, attention span, as well as your reaction speed, to enhance mental and physical stamina and resilience, to improve emotional intelligence, to be a potent antidote to anxiety, stress, depression, exhaustion, irritability. And it can also dramatically reduce pain and the emotional reaction to it. So a lot of different things that it has been found to help. So just a few more. It has been found to be at least as good as drugs or counseling of different kinds for the treatment of actually clinical level depression. It reduces addictive and self-destructive behavior. And I agree, regular mindfulness people who kind of integrate mindfulness into their everyday lives are generally, through research, found to be happier and more content, while being less likely to suffer from psychological distress. So, really great outcomes coming from a lot of exciting research at the moment. And there's just a little reference as to where I got that summary of research from, if you'd like to read more. There was actually some research done just recently at Harvard University, and this is really exciting. So it says, although the practice of meditation is associated with a sense of peacefulness and physical relaxation, practitioners have long claimed that meditation also provides cognitive and psychological benefits that persist throughout the day. This study, so the Harvard study, demonstrates that changes in brain structure may underlie some improvements and that people are not just feeling better because they're spending time relaxing. What they actually find through doing something called a functional MRI, where it actually analyzes what is going on in terms of electrical activity and brain matter within our brain, is that people who practice mindfulness showed significant changes in their actual gray brain matter following practicing mindfulness for a period of time. And that's hugely exciting to show that it actually isn't just that it's making us feel better at a more cellular level, but it goes a lot deeper than that, and it can actually change um, things that are happening in our brain. So maybe it's the geek in me, but it's pretty exciting stuff whenever you get to that level. So I think it's probably around time to take a break. I'm not quite sure how long. I think we've been on around half an hour so far already. So I put this little picture up of this little putty cat because I don't know, cats. I've got two cats myself, and I think cats are probably the most amazing creatures that live in the moment. It's like food, eat, sleep, play, get cozy, get cuddled, really just take it easy and take it moment by moment. So yeah, I just thought that would be nice to put in there. So if you just take maybe a 10-15 minute break, and we'll come back and continue things then. I did want to ask you to do a little something or to get a little something whenever you go on your break. Like I said, we're going to do some more mindfulness practices. So to make things a little bit more interesting, I thought we could start off by doing chocolate meditation. And if you don't have any chocolate in the house, or if you don't eat chocolate for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be chocolate. It can be any type of food, something that doesn't even have to be something that you enjoy, but just something that you could use to taste and to use for this meditation practice. So maybe a piece of fruit, or um, even something savory, whatever it is that you feel like you would like to um, become more connected to and in touch with, kind of what it might be like to use some of those principles to experience eating. So I will see you all back here in around 10 minutes. So enjoy and take a nice cup and a bit of a stretch. Okay. Okay, everyone. I hope you've all had a nice little stretch and a bit of a break. I should have actually said before I stopped that obviously if you're listening to this as a recording, you might have had to take a wee bit of a second to find out when it started again. So I apologize for that. Sorry, I'm just a little bit out of breath there. um, so the chocolate meditation, I actually had a little bit of chocolate when I was away and did a little bit of this myself. As I'm not obviously going to be able to do it now with you guys because I'm talking. So I hope you've got whatever you've chosen at hand, whether it's some nice chocolate or something else that you may like to eat, or something completely different again that you might not like to eat. And I'm just gonna just take a few minutes again to go through a different type of meditation, which really just gets us in tune with all of our different senses and lets us think a little bit more about our experience with food. And we do generally have a tendency to rush what we're eating and not really take it in. But of course, over the Christmas period, and we're even more likely to eat and drink and end up too full and not really fully perhaps be with the food that we're eating and enjoy it for what it is and experience the whole range of aromas and flavors and textures and everything that we can. So I'm just gonna go through it as if you've got chocolate, but if it's not, just adapt it whatever way you need. So I just want you to take whatever bit of chocolate you have, and first of all, I just want you to take a look at it. This is going to feel a little strange, so don't worry. And just observe it for what it is and kind of look at what color it is and the texture, that kind of thing, whether it's smooth or there's any kind of ripples to it. And also then just kind of notice what it feels like in your hand. It might even have started melting a little bit, and this is perfectly fine. Just kind of be with that experience and notice what it feels like. And then you might want to actually, smell the chocolate. This actually can be quite surreal because sometimes we don't really smell our food the way that you would if you kind of bring it up to your nose. So I just want you to smell it and just kind of observe it and notice, the smells that you're getting. Does it smell like you might expect it to smell? Does it smell slightly different, perhaps sweeter, or what is it that you notice when you kind of take in the aroma that's coming from the chocolate that you have? Take a second there. And once you have done that, yes, it's time eventually to eat the chocolate. Just put it in your mouth. I don't want you to chew it or anything else. I just want you to, put it on your tongue and close your mouth. And just notice what it feels like on your tongue. Probably starting to melt a little and you're feeling, getting to taste the various different flavors that are going on in it. And just let yourself really get in touch with the flavor of your particular piece of chocolate. Everything tastes so different and has such a different texture and smoothness and taste. So just really take it in. Is it how you normally experience that particular food or piece of chocolate? Does it seem different because you're kind of tuning into it more and eating it more slowly? And really just take some time to let the chocolate melt in your mouth. I imagine one of your instincts is probably to, bite into it and chew it as normal, and that's okay. It's okay you have that instinct, and even if you do it, that's okay. Just notice whatever it is you're doing, just notice what it feels like and try and kind of be with it. Really try and get in touch with the flavors that you're tasting. One of the things that always jumps out for me when I do this is how much sweeter the chocolate tastes. You can really kind of feel the sugar in it. It's also nice to do with dark chocolate, or whenever I first was introduced to meditation, mindfulness meditation with food, it was actually a raisin, and it was during our training. And you can imagine 18 clinical psychology trainees sitting around in a circle doing a mindful raisin exercise like this. It's definitely one for the books. So really just take your time, and it might be that you're coming to the end of the chocolate now, or maybe you've already swallowed it. Just see if there's any kind of flavors left in your mouth, or kind of how you feel after you've had it, and what kind of reflections it's making you have with regards to how this experience might be similar or different than your general kind of everyday experience with food. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That's just a little bit of an idea into, a different type of way of being mindful, and just bring that into the Christmas and New Year period, even if it's that you're drinking some alcohol that you like, or, eating something that you like, or just like, try and notice things that you've not noticed before, because that's really what mindfulness is about. It's about curiosity and observation, whilst kind of not judging, what is going on. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide, this is another type of mindfulness practice that you can do when you're, just doing whatever it is over the holiday period or in life in general. The intensely frustrating line meditation. This was put together by Danny Penman, who is the author of one of the books I've referenced at the end. So, like I said earlier, a lot of the time that we have around now, up to now, and even from now to New Year's, is we can spend a lot of time queuing, whether it's to go into a pub or going out for the night, or going to the shop, or even to a cafe, or whatever it is. There's a lot of the time that you can spend waiting, or just even waiting generally for people. So this introduces really, again, even in more depth, the idea that mindfulness accepts that some experiences are unpleasant. So mindfulness isn't about being with really nice, lovely, chocolatey experiences, but it's also about learning to be with the experiences that are, less pleasant, or more dull, or even downright horrible at times. And it actually introduces the idea of primary and secondary suffering. So primary suffering is the thing that happens. So something happens in our lives that upsets us, whether it's something somebody says, or even a thought that we've had, or something that happens in our life, and that's our primary suffering. The secondary suffering is what happens after that. So if we take the line meditation exercise, if we think about what can happen when we're in a line, the primary suffering is the fact that we're bored, agitated, worried, anxious, thinking about the fact, that all this is needing to be done, and I'm standing here in a line, and there's all these people, and it's noisy, and all the things that you feel like a lot of the time when these things happen in life. The secondary suffering is whenever we react to that. When it makes us more annoyed, more frustrated, more angry, we start getting more upset about, different things in our lives. It might initiate some emotional reaction within us, some anxiety, some frustration with a certain person, so many different things, which then just can cause us to enter into this really big spiral of frustration and anger and hurt, and it can just really kind of just send us off in a wild direction. And that's okay too, because these things happen. We're human, and that's what happens in life. But the idea of mindfulness is by being in that moment, that sometimes what we can do is actually be with the primary suffering in a way that it actually helps us minimize the chances of the secondary suffering from happening. So it allows us to what they call react, respond rather than react. So it allows us to consciously actually respond to the situation, that rather than kind of subconsciously just react and go off into like a deeper stage of um, frustration or emotional turmoil of some kind. So whenever you're in a situation like queuing up for something, just take a moment to tune in and ask yourself, what is going through my mind? What sensations are in my body? What does it feel like? And what emotions and impulses am I aware of? The thing that always pops into my mind here is whenever you're in a line and you're looking at the other line and you're thinking, is that one going to be quicker? Am I going to be quicker on this one? And you kind of walk back and forth, and rather than just actually being in the line you're in, because most of the time it really does make hardly any difference. Yeah, you might be a few minutes quicker, but you spend that time, you know, trying to figure out how to quicken the process up. So just again note what it is that you're feeling. And at the bottom here it just says accepting the sensations of primary suffering allows the secondary suffering to take care of itself and to progressively diminish. Again, I really want to point out that it doesn't mean that you have to be able to do this all the time. Actually, you don't have to do anything. It's about using kind of mindfulness ideas and practice to minimize it. But at the end of the day, it's also about not being judgmental to yourself if things do get on top of you and the primary suffering returns into something secondary, because that's okay too. Again, it's just about noticing and being with that. So for example, whenever you're in something like a line meditation, what you can do is just, again, focus on your breath. And you can use this for any situation that's a little bit, frustrating, or whenever you're feeling emotional or whatever over the holiday period. Is, sit or stand tall. Become aware of your body. Become a little bit more aware of yourself and where you are and who you are and the sensations in your body. And breathe. Come back to the breath. Just like the practice we did at the beginning, take one breath at a time. Notice what that breath feels like. Let thoughts wander in and out. Notice them as if they're clouds. Realize that the thoughts are not facts as much as they try and tell you that they are, whatever it is you're worrying about. And just then come back to your breath again. And again, just allow things in that moment to be the way they are. Because at the end of the day, even in that time where things are frustrating or emotional, it's still part of your life. It's still an experience that you can be with and, observe with curiosity. You don't have to like it. You can completely dislike it and be very frustrated by it, but just, allow yourself to be with whatever it is you're with and allow yourself to be wherever you are. And of course, be here. Just be here. I like the analogy of the fact that we're human beings, we're not human doings. So it is about being, really allowing ourselves to be rather than always being in the future and the past and allowing everything to, kind of spiral into something different. Again, it's easier said than done, so these are just ideas to kind of start to get yourself thinking more than something that you should, expect yourself to be able to do right now, straight away. And again, that meditation is from Jenny Penman as well. I want to talk now really and to think about people who are, feeling lonely over the holiday period. A lot of people feel very lonely and isolated during this time for a variety of reasons. Um, maybe you are on your own. and there's nobody about this year, or are you just maybe your husband, your wife, a child, your mom, your dad, maybe you even lost them a couple of years ago, but grief takes a long time and we miss people. And even if we're surrounded by lots of people, we can still feel isolated and lonely. And it's about really thinking about how can we ease the pain of isolation and loneliness during the holidays. Like I said before, I have a chronic back pain, which is one of the reasons I practice mindfulness. So during the holidays, I know I'm not going to be able to do everything that everybody else is able to do, and sometimes I might be left resting while people go out, or I'll hear them in another room, chatting and laughing and all those kind of things. So I've tried to use mindfulness to kind of help me live in that moment. And this lady called Toni Bernard has been a huge inspiration of mine. She's actually got chronic fatigue syndrome and has written a couple of books, which I actually haven't referenced here, but I will send the links of them. One of them's called How to Be Sick, and the other one's called How to Wake Up, I think. So this is a little something that I got off her blog that she writes for Psychology Today. So she talks about 3 simple practices that can help you feel less alone during the holidays. The first and hugely important one is compassion for yourself. I have really been struck through the past nearly 20 years of my work as a psychologist of how lacking in compassion that we generally are as human beings towards ourselves. And this is me included. We have a huge tendency to beat ourselves up, to think that if we're feeling a certain way that we shouldn't be, to think that we should have to be stronger. So many different things where we're so hard on ourselves. So it really is about, look towards the situation that you're in and loving yourself, and actually kind of recognizing and allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling. One of the things that Toni actually talks about a lot is whenever she's feeling, a certain loneliness or pain or suffering, is to kind of say hello to it. So like, I know you're here. I know you're suffering, and I'm going to look after you right now. One of the things that I always find helpful and that I've shared with a lot of my clients is that whenever you're in this kind of situation where you're struggling in some way, is to ask yourself, what do I need? So if you're feeling isolated during the holidays, whether it is that you're on your own or you're surrounded by some people but still feel very isolated and lonely, ask yourself, what do I need? What do I need? Not what do you want or what do you have to do, but what do you need right now in order to, to help yourself, to be with yourself. And then another part that she talks about is feeling joy for others. This is not always an easy thing to do, but it really actually makes us feel better too. So it isn't just I suppose that idea that there's no such thing as a selfless act, but feeling joy for others actually, even if you're not with somebody and they're going out to do something that you can't do, or if you're on your own but there's other people out there doing different things, is actually, to feel happy for them, to allow yourself to kind of have that shared feeling of collective humanity and the idea that other people are experiencing things that are good for them and that give them joy, and to feel that joy for them as well, and to feel that beauty for the world alongside obviously the compassion for yourself.